when you look at natural bilingualism, the question is always, is it the same area or a different area that sort of is involved in the processing of particular language aspects? And I think when looking into the literature, the majority of the results rather go into the direction than saying it's the same brain area. Sometimes if you have a dominant versus a non-dominant language, you have more activation for the non-dominant language than for the dominant one, because the more automatic you speak or listen to a language, the less activation you see in the brain. So everything that sort of is a lot of more difficult for you, you see much more activation in a particular brain region. But the brain region usually is the same. Usually when we work with bilinguals, we work with adults, and then the problematic issue is the following. One would like to have known under which conditions sort of a child has learned the one and the other language in a bilingual subject. We also would like to know more about, for example, is the one language only spoken with the mother, the other one language only spoken with the father? What impact does that have? Was the mother more often with the child than the father? Are there emotional aspects involved? We can sort of have questionnaires where we try to figure out what sort of particular language career, if you want, a subject has had, but certainly this is not a very objective scientific method. So the problem with bilingual research really is that it's really very hard to control what the particular constraints were during language acquisition. A colleague of mine, Ann Cutler, she has basically said, you know, you really have to force the subject to decide which language is closer to your heart. And so she asked subjects, you know, if you were an aphasic patient, which language would you give up if you had to? And by that, she has hoped to get sort of a real handle on what's the dominant language. But this may not be very easy to really decide, and it may not be stable, because maybe one language was sort of close to your heart and very dominant 2 years ago, but it's not anymore now. So there is a lot of uncertainty in the background results that we have. And once we would be able to have a complete record of how the subject has learned a language, certainly then we could ask the relevant questions. One possibility of really controlling the input, controlling the learning phase, is to use artificial grammars. So we bring the subjects into the laboratory, and they have to learn a new language. The new language could either be an artificial grammar, or you could also make subjects learn a language that they have never learned before. So, for example, we had subjects coming into the lab and learning a mini Japanese. So a language like Japanese with the Japanese syntactic rules, but sort of a very restricted vocabulary in order to see how sort of they use particular kinds of informations to learn a language. One other possibility is to have subjects coming in and learn artificial grammar. And the artificial grammar, then you can design the artificial grammar the way you want. Certainly the grammar should have the grammatical rules of a natural grammar, so that you can say something about normal language acquisition. But you can certainly then create new words the way you want and look at particular phonological aspects that might be relevant for language learning, for word learning, and so on and so forth. So you are able to control everything. And that's what a lot of labs are doing these days.